Thank you so much for coming out to the Leadership Summit. You know, we said the Friday after 4th of July, will anybody show up? And our team said, all those who love their country will show up. So give yourselves a hand. You're here because you love your country. You know, we are just so blessed to have this kind of support. Most people would say a Friday in July, there's just absolutely no way you'd get people to attend. But we have an all-star lineup. Just an all-star lineup. The guy who'll be following me, Senator Tom Cotton, you'll be extremely blessed by. Langford and Scott coming after them. By the way, they all were on the same plane from D.C. in storms last night to get here. They said you just about had to cancel your summit because none of us could have made it. But they're all going to be here, and then Joni Ernst and Governor Reynolds and others. It is going to be a great, great day. And what about Rob Rosenbaum? What do you think about that guy? You see, I have something in common with Rob. Rob was told a lot of times, you're not going to amount to anything, you're not going to be anything. Why search for a wife? Why even think about having a family? All those types of things. I remember when I was in high school, I had a teacher come up to me and say, Vander Plaats, you will never make it in the real world. And I looked back at him, and I said, okay, I'll do what you did. I'll become a teacher. And I became a teacher, and I became a coach, and I became a high school principal. And I absolutely love kids. And I love that young man who just spoke before me. See, Rob Rosenbaum, they moved to Sheldon when his dad took a new pastor's position with First Reformed Church in Sheldon. And his parents talked to me about being diagnosed with this rare muscular dystrophy. And that he's going to walk a little cocky down the hallways. And the reason he's walk a little bit cocky so no one can see that I've got a weakness. He was going to wear a mask that everything was okay. And I remember when he came to me before high school graduation, he said, Mr. Vander Plaats, he came to my office, he was there a lot, sometimes for good, sometimes for not. But came to my office and said, Mr. Vander Plaats, I'm not going to go through high school graduation. I said, why would you not go through high school graduation? He goes, because I'm not going to be made a fool of in front of my peers, in front of the community. I said, why would you be made a fool of, Rob? He said, you see those stairs I've got to handle, I've got to walk up? I'll never be able to navigate those stairs up or down. I'm not going to let him see that. So right after he left, I called in our shop teacher, Claude Struve. Said, Mr. Struve, I've been notified by the state of Iowa. Our stage is not ADA compliant, and they have a problem with that. He said, what do you mean? I said, we need a ramp. He goes, we don't have any graduates who need a ramp. I said, I know, but they don't understand. You know the state. We need a ramp going up, and we need a ramp going down. And he and that shop class, they worked overtime to get a ramp going up and a ramp going down so we'd be ADA compliant. I brought Rob back in and said, Rob, you're going to your high school graduation. And no one's going to know. But you're going to get your diploma, but the choice is up to you. And Rob walked up that ramp. I was never so proud to see a young man get his high school diploma and walk down. And now to see what he's doing with his life. Instead of saying, you know what, let somebody else take care of me. No, I'm going to run a ministry called Rise Ministry, where I rise above it. And his disabilities and his deficiencies are obvious. But sometimes I look at us and I said, what about us? What's our problem? What are we wearing a mask for? When will we be authentic with each other? I love kids. I love Rob. Matter of fact, when I was a teacher and a coach, my first teaching job was in Boone, Iowa. And I interviewed to become the head basketball coach at Jefferson, Iowa. They had won one game the previous year. And it was going to be a rebuilding process. And the superintendent said to me, he said, Bob, here's the deal. If we bring you on to be the head basketball coach at Jefferson, we haven't beat Denison in 31 tries. We're 0-31 against Denison. And they're our arch rival. I said to him, you need to find a new arch rival. Someone that you can beat. And he said, well, here's the deal. He said, if you come in, if you become the head basketball coach at Jefferson, and if you beat Denison, we'll make you mayor of Jefferson. And I took the job. And I became the head coach at Jefferson, and here comes Denison into town. They're ranked 5th in the state. They're undefeated in the conference. And it happened to be on that particular night, Jefferson thought it'd be a good idea that we would have an all-decade night for everybody to pack the gym for this 5th-ranked team, Denison, playing this upstart rebuild called Jefferson. And I remember going out on the floor and saying a silent prayer. God, don't let these kids be embarrassed tonight. And I went back into the locker room and I could tell these kids were nervous. And the reason I could tell these kids were nervous is because they were yawning. Sometimes when you yawn, you're tired, but other times when you yawn, you are nervous. And they were yawning. And they weren't talking. And I told the kids, I said, listen, guys, stick to these 4 things and we'll beat Denison tonight. I said, one is you got to respect your opponent. These young men have been practicing day and night to beat you. Respect them. Do not try to trash talk your way to success tonight. You respect your opponent. And one of the ways you respect your opponent is you give your best against your opponent tonight. Everybody okay with that? They all nodded. We're okay. We'll respect our opponent. I said, 2 is you're going to stick with the fundamentals tonight. You're going to set solid screens. You're going to make good passes. You're going to play solid defense. Every loose ball will be ours. You will box out on every rebound. You will go get the ball. Do you guys understand? We will stick with the fundamentals tonight. He said, yeah, we're going to stick with the fundamentals tonight, Coach. We're going to stick with the fundamentals. I said, 3 is I need you to focus. I need you to focus, focus, focus. For 4 quarters, 8 minutes a quarter, 32 straight minutes, I need you to focus, focus, focus on the game plan that we have been preparing. There's no play into the crowd tonight. There's a big crowd out there. You do not play to the crowd tonight. You focus on the game plan that we put in front of you. You understand that? We understand that. I said, number 4, you need to believe with every stitch of your God-given DNA that when you hit those locker room doors, that you can beat Denison. And it was so much fun to watch these kids hit that locker room door with a full belief that they could win. And we went out in warm-ups, and I saw our kids starting to watch Denison warm up, and Denison was really good. And they're watching Denison warm up, and I could see the fear in their eyes, like, oh my gosh, we got to play these guys. We're 4 minutes into warm-ups. I kid you not. Usually we take 15 minutes into warm-ups. We're 4 minutes into warm-ups. I tell the kids, back in the locker room. They went back in the locker room. I said, listen, guys, I've been watching them warm up. And they're like, yeah, I have too. And I said, listen, they're not as good as I thought they'd be. I didn't tell them they're better than I thought they'd be. I said, now, do you look me in the eyes? You respect them. You stay with the fundamentals. You focus, focus, focus. And when you leave that locker room door, you believe you can win that game tonight. And we went back out there. And the tip happened, and we started playing the game. And before you know it, we're down 16-4. Not being a dumb coach, I called timeout, brought them in, said, guys, we got them right where we want them. We're running up and down with them. They sweat like you. They run. I mean, we're good. You just stick those 4 things. Respect them. Stay with the fundamentals. Focus. Believe you can win. And for the rest of the half, we went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And at halftime, we were down by 9. And our assistant coach came up to me and he said, Bob, how about if we just double the score and go home? I said, that means we get beat by 18. He goes, I know, that'd be a good night if we got beat by 18 tonight. At halftime, we're back in the locker room. I reiterated those 4 things. You respect them. You stay with the fundamentals. You focus, focus, focus tonight. And you believe you can win. And we went back out there, and you know what? Those kids started to run with them. Those kids started to play with them. And pretty soon we're within 4. Pretty soon we're within 2. Pretty soon we're tied up. And the place is going nuts because we should not be here. And all of a sudden there's 17 seconds left. And Mark Lane, a left-handed sophomore, small forward, he goes off of a screen. He lifts up and he kisses it off the glass. And we are up by 2. And our kids start celebrating. I'm like, get back, get back, get back. And Denison's best shooter's in the corner, ready to shoot a 3. They find the kid, they throw him the ball, and he puts it up from 3-point land. And it goes in. And then back out, and we won the game. We beat Denison that night. Yes, we beat Denison. And the place went nuts. And the superintendent came up to me, Bob Schmidt, and he said, Bob, we're going to make you mayor. I said, I want to be governor. But the reason I tell you that story is because when I took that job, the victory was very clearly laid out for me. Beat Denison. I knew what victory would be if we rebuilt a program. Beat Denison. And not only did we beat them once, we beat them twice. My radio interview when I was leaving the head coaching job to take a high school principalship in Northwest Iowa, the radio announcer said, Bob, you're probably the only coach I know alive in Jefferson history that's beat Denison twice. I knew what the victory was. My question for us today is, do we know what the victory is? What's the victory? Is the victory re-electing President Trump? Is the victory having a Republican majority in Congress and in the Senate? Is the victory winning the argument of the day? Or is it what Rob was saying? Think bigger. Look higher. Don't reduce the gospel of Jesus Christ. Donald Trump's been a friend of mine for about 10 years. Pray for him, cheer him on when he does right, be a voice of accountability when he goes off the beaten path. That's our call, right? Wasn't that Nathan to David? Wasn't that Daniel to Nebuchadnezzar? Shouldn't that be the voice of the Christian remnant? Shouldn't that be the voice of the church? You see, when Nathan went to David, who had the power? Nathan had the power because he represented the church. He represented God. What is our victory? You see, when we started with the family leader some 20-odd years ago, and Chuck Hurley was the president, then called the Iowa Family Policy Center, and Chuck would tell you this, it was all about policy. Win the policy of the day. Advance righteous policy, stop unrighteous policy. And then they saw, that's not enough. And then we got very involved in elections. And we said, we need to elect the right people. If we elect the right people, they'll advance the right policy. So let's elect the right people. And we got really involved in elections, and we're still very involved in elections, and we're still very involved in policy. But this is what we've come to understand. Politics, elections, policy is downstream from culture. We need cultural transformation. We need revival in this land like never before. And revival begins in the house of the Lord. That's where it begins. And so everything we do right now, and you're going to see this throughout the day, our church network is unprecedented at what's happening with the spiritual temperature in the Capitol. And Greg Baker and his team are doing a great job with that lane. But Danny Carroll and Chuck Hurley and Daniel Sunny and the legislative team would say they're the other wing of the airplane to advance the righteous policy. And they're linked in spirit and with heart that it's the gospel first. And to see politics and policy and capitals and legislation as being a mission field. It's the gospel first. It's anchored in prayer. And it's authentically engaging the bride of Christ called the church. Ladies and gentlemen, we need the church to rise up and to be the timeless voice of this culture like never before. What Rob talked about with his teenage girls, up there, I wanted to yell payback, but what Rob's talking about with his teenage girls, we're seeing all the time, are we not? Guys, do you realize in 2006 when I was the lieutenant governor nominee on the Republican ticket, if I would have said marriage is between a man and a woman, it would have been, well, duh. And in 2009, it's completely changed. Do you realize that in a venue like this, if I'd say men use the male restroom and female use the female restroom, that'd be a, well, no-brainer. Today, that's up for grabs. And the former high school principal in me says, have we lost our collective mind of allowing high school boys to go into female shower rooms? Have we lost our minds? Where the darkness now takes center stage. What's the victory? See, we believe it's cultural transformation first. Wilberforce thought it was cultural transformation first if you're going to end slavery. We believe it's cultural transformation first if we're going to end abortion. And I believe one day, ladies and gentlemen, you will see Roe v. Wade overturned in this country. We are going to end abortion. But it's going to be reviving the culture first. If we revive the culture first for cultural transformation, then we impact elections with ministers of God. I got to tell you, one of the things I always have a hard time was when somebody says, well, Bob, why would you be upset with President Trump about that? He's just a businessman. He's not a minister. And I go, whoa, time out. Do not lower the bar for him. Romans 13 clearly states he's a minister of God, and that's God's institution, not man's institution. And therefore our bar should be exceptionally high because this is the biggest platform in the entire world. So therefore we should call on him to be a minister of God. And we shrink back from our responsibility when we don't call it out. And we lose our testimony to a watching generation when we don't call it out. You can cheer him on, but also be a voice of accountability. See, then we can elect ministers of God, and then we can influence righteous policy. But then we can be an authentic model for others to follow. If I gave you a homework assignment tonight, I would say this. Go read 1 Corinthians 9. And read what Paul says about everybody runs a race. And when they run a race, they go for this earthly prize. The earthly prize there'll be no more. The wreath of laurels that are surely going to fade away. He says, but we run a race, a different race. It's for an eternal prize. And so though I'm a free man, I become a slave to all. I become all things to all people. Why? So I can win some. Should that be our victory? Should our victory be our children following Jesus? Ladies and gentlemen, there's a lot of us in this room. We need our kids to come back home. That should be a prayer. Should our victory be when a husband and wife are restored with Christ at the center? And we have authenticity in the marriage? Should our victory be when churches are not called on to be political, but they are called on to be biblical and culturally relevant? Is that our victory? That should be our victory. That's what we should look at. But then Paul says this, he goes, that's why I discipline myself. I make my body, my slave. Why? So I don't waste a punch. I don't box aimlessly, but it's targeted. It's focused. I think when you read 1 Corinthians 9 afresh and anew, I think when you read it, I think Paul's going to be shouting in your ear, recognize your opponent. Recognize your opponent. We live in divided times. The people that you believe are divisive are not your enemy. This is spiritual warfare. And they need to be one with the gospel. Read Ephesians 6. He would say, recognize your opponent. He would say, stay with the fundamentals. Be in the Word. Be in a community of church. Stay anchored in prayer. But be authentic. Stay with the fundamentals. Focus, focus, focus on the game plan that God has written out for you. The Great Commission would be a great place to start. Focus, focus, focus on the game plan. And then 4, I think what Paul would be saying, when you leave this leadership summit, when you hit those doors, believe with every stitch of your body that we win. There's too many Christians walking around like we lose. Ladies and gentlemen, there should be a bounce in your step. There should be joy in your heart that should transition to a smile on your face because we win. So I am thrilled that you're here today. But when you leave, hear it again. Recognize your opponent. Stay with the fundamentals. Come on, team. Fundamentals. 3 is we need to focus, focus, focus. One of Satan's greatest efforts is to distract us. Stay focused. And number 4 is believe with every stitch of your God-given body that there is a Savior and He has redeemed you and He can redeem others, and that is our victory. Thank you so much. Enjoy your day.
Good morning. My name is Danny Carroll. I am the Senior Policy Advisor. Is that what they got up there? No, I'm not there. There he is. Senior Policy Advisor. That's a name they give you at a certain